Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at Venus conjoining Jupiter in the sign of Cancer once again, but today we're going to do horoscopes for all 12 signs. Yesterday I took a look at this exact same conjunction and broke it down in terms of things to watch for and did a deeper meditation on the shadow side of Venus and Jupiter because most people are talking about this transit as though it is just unanimously the best transit that could ever possibly happen. So I wanted to push back on that narrative a little bit and provide some of the what might be the shadow of the transit, in addition to what is subjectively really nice about the transit. We did that yesterday. If you missed that video, you may want to check it out. Today, horoscopes for all 12 signs. I have broken these horoscopes down into it's a new format that I'm trying out. This is kind of par for the course lately. I've been trying out a lot of new formats for things to shake things up, and I've been really enjoying it. So I hope you'll enjoy this today too. I'll tell you more about that in a second. That's our agenda for today. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. It's my goal to see if we can get to 100,000 subscribers on the channel by next summer. That gives us a year to have a really nice push of subscribers, which I think we can do. But if you are not yet subscribed and you listen regularly, it means a lot to us if you do that. Also give us that daily thumbs up and maybe even drop a comment. The algorithm changed this summer for YouTube, apparently. It's been very noticeable. It really does help us if people just drop a comment. That keeps the channel kind of growing and thriving. Anyway, you can find transcripts of any of the daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. When you are over there, remember that tomorrow night is my next monthly webinar. I'm giving a class on the 7th house. So if you want to learn more about the house of love, relationships, also, why was this house associated with the Kama Sutra? We're going to talk about that. This house was originally associated with sex, pleasure, desire. So more on that and giving you a deeper understanding of the 7th house in your birth chart, or if you work with clients, come check that out. If you cannot attend the live webinar tomorrow night, when you register, you always get the replay with all of our webinars. So you'll have the recording available for you to watch at your own time. The other thing, of course, is we are promoting our upcoming retreat. This immersive retreat in Mexico is taking place in June of 2026. It just went on sale this week. It's called The Oracle Within, a training in the theory and practice of divinatory astrology. This is the first live training program I've done in retreat format. I'm really excited about it, sort of dedicated to the memory of one of my main mentors, Jeffrey Cornelius, and his perspective that astrology is a form of oracular communication. What does that mean? How do we access and develop a relationship with the Oracle? We'll be looking at that in a wonderful, beautiful sort of jungle beach setting in Mexico next year. So check that out at the end of today's video. There's an informational video that I've tagged on to the end to tell you more about the program in case you have any questions about it. All right, on that note, let us go ahead and put up the real-time clock. Let's refresh on what's going on here. And then we're going to do some horoscopes today. And I've got a new format for you that I'm excited to try on. All right, well, as has been the story of my very wet Cancerian Jupiter summer, I've been dealing with power outages like all the time. So everything has to like boot back up. And then I always forget certain programs need rebooting. When I'm in the middle of recording, I'm like, oh yeah, everything got reset. So my Epic Pen is back. We have the Jupiter conjunction. Let me just, oh my gosh, here we go. All right. So if we go forward here, I had to get this back up to speed. So here we are, Wednesday, August 13th. You can see that the conjunction between Venus and Jupiter is just separating within a few degrees of exact. If we give this just a little bit more time this week, we'll notice that they are separating 3 to 4 degrees by Friday. As long as they're co-present in the sign, in some ways, you'll still be feeling the effects of their co-presence, but the acute moment of the symbols expressing themselves in our lives through all different kinds of mediums, people, places, etc., shows up typically when they're within about 3 degrees. So that's yesterday, that's today, take it up to about Friday. What I want to do today is some horoscopes for all 12 whole signs. We'll go Aries through Pisces in order. And I'm going to give you a new format. But before I tell you about that, I want to remind you that yesterday's content is really a good starting point for this transit because we looked at the archetypal combination of Venus and Jupiter from the ancient standpoint, what is this combination all about? What do you tend to see? Why does this tend to be such a subjectively good transit? What's the history behind that on a level of craft and theory? And then what is the potentially problematic shadow side of Venus Jupiter combinations? I had some really a fun time doing that with some bibliomancy, some I Ching, and some, I think, deeper meditation on the combination and why it could be difficult. And the reason to do that is because I have seen nothing but overpromising for the most part from astrologers online about the Venus Jupiter combination. That's not to say it isn't it's the joining of the benefics, of course, and Jupiter's exalted. So there's a lot to like about this transit, but there's always a shadow. What is that? It's important to make sure we pay attention to that right now so that we're not, deceiving ourselves or losing sight of something that's potentially there and a little bit more problematic. So go back to that video yesterday if you haven't seen it, check it out. All right, now today we're going to look at this from a couple of different standpoints. As I go through each of the whole sign horoscopes, we're looking at the house location of Venus and Jupiter in Cancer right now. And you could listen to this for your sun or rising sign. And I'm going to be breaking down some delineations that fall into 4 areas. One is psychological. How may this show up in your life given the house location of the conjunction on a psychological level? 2, on a mundane level. 3, in terms of people, places, and things that could correspond to Jupiter that you might just notice. And then 4 are potential shadows. For me, this way of organizing horoscopes is really helpful because there's nothing worse than just getting lost in trying to say too many different things. And that is a problem with horoscopes because they can show up in so many different ways. You want to try to cover as much of the range of expressions that you can, but you also want to you want to stay as organized as possible. So I'm trying this out as an organizational strategy today. We'll see how it works. And what I'll do is we'll start off with Aries and we'll talk about the whole sign house location. We'll roll on through each sign looking at these 4 areas. I'll give you some brief things to think about. All right. So what I'm going to do first on this screen to simplify our perspective is take away everything but Venus and Jupiter from the chart view so that we can see things a little bit more clearly and simply. So there we have it. There's Aries rising with the Venus-Jupiter conjunction in the 4th house. I'm going to back this up to today, Wednesday. Again, feeling this yesterday, feeling it at the start of the week, feeling it through the end of the week would be normal. All right, so on that level, or on that note, this is landing in your 4th house. So I'm not going to keep the chart up for the whole time because it's nice to be able to see see the audience a little bit more. Okay, so anyway, so if you're an Aries rising, this is showing up in your 4th house. I've got some things for you to think about given the presence of this transit in your 4th house for Aries. On the psychological level, the joining of these benefics in a place that's associated with home, family, roots, the private, intimate sphere of life could really bring up the need for safety, security, intimacy, a place of groundedness, the importance of private relationships and spheres of life in which you feel safe to share a deeper part of who you are as themes that could really be important right now. So watch for those things psychologically. On a mundane level, I would point out the potential for blessings, benefits, aid, resources, or support that come through things like family members or real estate or the realm of home, family, ancestry, and maybe an emphasis on things that are beautiful or lush or lavish or expensive in the home, possibly things that are meant to adorn or make more beautiful or expansive the home. That would be things to watch for on a more mundane level. Whereas when we think about people, places, and things, I think about the importance of things like mothers, grandparents, or maybe grandmothers in particular, the goddess and her role in the home, things like cooking in kitchens, maybe some need for retreat or a private inner spa day or something like that. I also think about family recipes or heirlooms or memory books, photo albums. That's what I'm thinking of. And then finally, for shadows that could come up around this, I think about the potential for codependency or problems that are rooted in emotional entanglements, clinging to things from the past, or maybe even the way in which emotional ties, bonds, or loyalties that are so strong can like stunt our personal growth or development, where we need to individuate away from certain kinds of bonds or attachments. Those are the kinds of things that I would watch for on the level of shadows. So that's the new format. I hope that you like that. I think that it's for me, it's much easier to break it into categories like that, because then I don't lose my train of thought. And I find that as I'm circumambulating an archetypal combination in a house, having a little bit more of an organizational structure has been really helpful for me as I've been doing these lately. I've been doing them in some other formats too, like the 4 areas, 5 things to watch for in 4 areas of life, for example. Anyway, all right, let's move on to Tauruses. I'll flash this up on the wheel really quick so that you can see where things are at. If you're a Taurus rising or sun sign, whichever one you prefer to listen to, you have this Venus-Jupiter conjunction in the 3rd house. 3rd house is a place related to siblings, the mind, the local environment. There's a strong emphasis on learning. In Indian astrology, there's a strong emphasis on our desires, efforts, ambitions, and things we're trying to develop or build through practice, repetition, and effort. That's an interesting way of looking at it. But it's also such a house of the mind and our psychology. It was called the joy of the moon in Hellenistic astrology. So let's break this down for Tauruses on the psychological level. The potential for things that are very flowing, musical, poetic, storytelling, podcasting, blogging, journaling, the kinds of things that are coming up in communication that are emotionally satisfying, rewarding, supportive, the theme of emotional charisma and its association with learning or speaking or communicating, the way in which your environment might be filled with positive, fertile, even family-oriented themes, or just things that are flowing emotionally. On the mundane level, we could see, I would think about folk culture, the roots that you have in culture and community. And some of that nowadays is online. It's not necessarily the literal village that you live in, but what are the things that are most supportive and beautiful and sort of flourishing or growing or blossoming with respect to the kinds of local psychic ecosystems that you belong to, the cultures and communities that represent something of your psychic roots, and like the kind of like the aquarium that you live in. It's the ecosystem of your life, and what's flourishing or growing or what feels supportive in that space right now. I would look for that. And also on a mundane level, I would wonder a lot about the importance of the things that you're learning, or the kinds of artifacts from the past that are showing up somehow, or maybe family ancestral artifacts. When it comes to people, places, and things, I would think about musicians, storytellers, charismatic teachers, cafes, coffee shops, libraries. I would think about anyone that has anything that's like vintage. Like even the idea of like an old vintage VW bus comes into my head as an image if I were doing sacred images right now, you know. I think something as a thing that even comes to my mind would be like a sacred journal that you have in a drawer or something like that. Finally, the shadows. 3rd house, always a little bit nebulous to describe. These cadent houses are such liminal spaces, but the shadow to me would be about what forms of communication are enabling or codependent or emotionally stunting your growth. Gossip and overly emotional attachments running how you think, or influencing how you think in a not so helpful way. Problems around jealousy or competition with people that are supposed to be neighbors or friends or allies also comes to my mind. What attachments are healthy versus unhealthy would also be a theme right now. All right, let's move on now to Gemini rising. I'm going to put Gemini on the ascendant of the chart. Let's bring Gemini back up, or let's bring the chart back up and put Gemini on the ascendant. This creates a meeting for the benefics in your 2nd house. a place, if you're a Gemini rising, that is associated with things like money, development of resources, acquisition of resources, business. It's an Arta house in Indian astrology, which means it's a place of material security and building up from basic security, things like acquisition of resources and development of wealth are things that can contribute to a feeling of happiness. Basically, it's what you have. Also, to a certain extent, what you spend. So let's now consider some of these themes. So again, breaking them down into these categories, on a psychological level, I would think a lot about emotional security and the difference between emotional security and financial security, or an exploration of the connection between the two. I would think about themes like generosity and abundance and how and where we distribute different kinds of resources. Maybe they're financial, maybe they're emotional. Who do we give them to? What do we need from other people? I would think about the potential for an exploration of family karma in relation to things like emotional and physical or material security. On a mundane level, I would think about the money that's like money coming in through something as literal as food or catering or restaurants or a daycare that's run out of your home. So if you get really literal and tangible, you can almost see something that's about accumulating wealth that's perhaps very Cancerian, food, children, caring, nursing, something maybe very literal like that. Whereas when we go to people, places, and things, I think about an antique store, and I think about an auction filled with antique, expensive, beautiful items, or I think about homemaking. Doesn't necessarily have to be, the stereotypical like wife at home homemaking, just homemaking in general. How do you shape and build an environment that feels good and secure, but also is nice, and you feel like you have some nice things? I think about old historic buildings, old cinemas, antique places that conjure up memories of the past and make you feel good. And it's someplace you don't mind spending money because it takes you back into the past. Or I think about going to the store to purchase new cookware, or going to a farmer's market and buying produce. The shadows that come to my mind for this placement would be something around emotional spending or lack of emotional impulse control in relation to things like money and finances, overindulgence, possessiveness, emotional issues that cloud your judgment when it comes to managing resources. These would be some of the shadows that come to my mind. All right. See, I'm really liking having some, like, for me, like, as someone who frequently feels very overwhelmed by horoscopes, this is nice to have like a little structure. And I've been experimenting with these things this summer and really feeling pretty good about it. So, all right, let's go on to our next horoscope, which is going to be Cancers. Now I'm going to put the chart back up on the screen to show you. If you're a Cancer sun or rising and you're listening to this, this conjunction is taking place in your first house. That is a place that's connected to selfhood, body, health, identity, individuation, the process of understanding your own nature and essence. It's your volition, your will, your health. Really powerful place to have this conjunction, and a place that I think the psychological themes and the physical themes could be very important. On a psychological level, I think about what it means to be self-caring and self-loving. It sounds so cliched, but Venus, Jupiter, with Jupiter exalted in the first house of Cancer, really does strike me as, are you taking care of yourself? Do you feel healthy? Do you feel vibrant? Are you connected with people or things or practices that can enrich your sense of well-being and health? This may also be a combination that shows up in terms of the way your personality is manifesting right now. We all go through seasons. You might be feeling full of life. You might be very fertile. You could be getting pregnant. You could be showing up as a very maternal, caring figure, someone who's exuding strong emotions or exuding warmth and beauty at the same time, a kind of maternal warmth and glow. There could be a way in which right now you're really identified with some kind of mothering or caregiving or caretaking or healing for others. So those psychological qualities are seeking to embody themselves in you right now. How is that showing up? Number two would be the mundane sphere. Something to me, the mundane sphere, the first house is really the body, its appearance. Subjectively, how do you feel? How do you look? What kinds of rituals or acts of self-care are important right now, because the most mundane part of the first house is really appearance and health and vitality. Are you changing your wardrobe? Are you changing something about your skincare? Like, it could be that, to me, is the mundane level. It's likely to appear as something physical, something related to appearance. Number three, the people, places, or things that come to my mind that you will probably be drawn to or identified with would be the cook, the doula, the midwife, the mother, the nurse, the spa caregiver, or even like an esthetician with a motherly touch, the gardener, the silversmith. I'm thinking of like moon things too. The other thing that comes to my mind with this would be any artifacts or items that have a lot of personal, emotional, and maybe even ancestral relevance. And then number four would be the shadows. Are you not taking care of yourself would be a shadow. Are you over giving but under receiving? Very common problem for Cancer risings. I get my feelings of well-being by being liked because I prioritize other people, I care for other people, and I derive my self-worth from being a caretaker, but maybe I'm depleted on the inside. Very possible for Venus, Jupiter as a shadow in the first house. Emotional burnout, loss of identity due to things like being a wife, a mother, a spouse, a lover, whatever. Codependent tendencies in general. So those are some, and you can notice how some of these are recurring, right? Because some of these are common themes that will come up for Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, regardless really of what house they're in. Now, let's go on to Leos. So for Leos, we take this combination of Venus and Jupiter, we place it in your 12th house, which can be a kind of blind spot or an area of unconsciousness that seeks integration that we're afraid of, or we lack. There's maybe some insecurity around, or that could be a place where we're undermining ourselves, or maybe someone or something else is undermining us. It's a very complicated spot, but one we often experience a lot of spiritual growth when we get in touch with, because in Indian astrology, it's considered a moksha house, which means there's a lot of spiritual liberation tied to the things that happen in the 12th house, freeing from unhealthy attachments, for example. Let's go through these for Leos. In the 12th house, psychological dimension might be anything that is hidden that drains us emotionally. Or on the other hand, and more positively, I think would be finding that we are capable of a much deeper level of connection, compassion, vulnerability, forgiveness, love in areas where maybe we've been closed down or afraid. So the potential for a deeper emotional vulnerability and healing connections to others would be one thing that we're getting in touch with right now, that maybe it's not always so easy for us to get in touch with. I would also think about anything that ties you to a sense of transcendence that involves caring for self, healing of self, nurturing of self or others. Number two would be on the mundane level. I think about places of retreat and solitude that are nourishing, mothering, Cancerian, almost like the image of someone going to a piece of family land, and saying, well, we're gone, so you can just be in the house for a while on a piece of land, and someone goes to the family land, their sister's place or something, to heal, to just write and journal and take some time away. I think about, obviously, retreats, institutions of psychiatric healing or rehabilitation. I think of artistic or monastic settings that are sort of away from the world as potential places of healing and nourishment, or connection with other people that are healing. The people, places, and things that come to my mind here are people. I see the image of someone going into a prison to provide therapeutic relief for inmates, or I think of secret places filled with water, or I think of monasteries, sanctuaries, prisons, retreat centers. I think of otherworldly goddesses wandering in the woods, very mystical placement for these planets. And so the people, places, and things to me are very, they're all very otherworldly. Number 4, the shadow. This to me would be about fantasies that are undermining us, codependencies, or emotional enmeshments that are unhealthy, and that may seem like they're a really good thing, but are actually draining us. When our compassion can be exploited or taken advantage of, these are things that I would watch for as potential. And then maybe the potential to bypass through things like sentimentality or emotional attachment. Alrighty. So that's for my Leos with the 12th house emphasis. Let's go on to Virgos. If you are a Virgo rising, you'll see that the conjunction of Venus and Jupiter is happening in your 11th house, place of community, allies, friends, groups, dreams, aspirations, and the realization or attainment of dreams and aspirations. It's a Kama house that's associated with happiness and desire in Indian astrology. So really beautiful to consider it from that perspective. So let's talk about this from our 4 categories here. On a psychological level, I would think about this as the emotional bonds, attachments, and connections to groups or people or friends or allies that we have that are naturally very supportive and beneficial. I think that's subjectively one of the best parts of this for Virgos. On the other hand, I would say, and we'll get to this in the shadow, you do have to be careful of what are healthy versus unhealthy emotional bonds or connections to people or groups. I would be thinking about who and what is most supportive, connected, what feels like family and home out in the world in terms of the people that I think of as friends or allies. On a mundane level, I think about things like charity groups that are supportive of women or mothers or children, groups that are supportive of immigrants and refugees, groups that are supportive of anything that is compassionate, sensitive. It's about safety and protecting the vulnerable or weak. And I also would think about family, like almost like a family therapy circle or group or something like that. These are things that are just mundane that pop into my head to, get your own wheels turning, thinking about it. Number 3 on my list, people, places, and things, I think about social workers. I think about group therapies that focus on family background, almost like an Al-Anon group for family members of alcoholics. I think about community theater, where the kids and the people in the community all get to work on an artistic project together. I think about a soup kitchen or a place that serves people who are without home. I think about things like even like a Christmas pageant. I know it's not Christmas time, but something that has this kind of uplifting artistic quality that celebrates something almost religious or spiritual. And then on the level of shadows, to me, this would be about the potential to over-idealize a community group, bonds with people, taking on the emotional burdens of a group, or possibly unhealthy emotional bonds or attachments, forming cliquishness or clannish, behavior that can lead to exclusivity and hurt feelings, and maybe actually is preventing a kind of personal authenticity because we're overly identified with a group or almost like bonded family type of dynamic. So I would watch for those as shadows, and just who is and isn't a healthy ally, group, or community container for where I'm at in life. All right, next we go on to Libra. I'm going to put the chart up on the screen and show you when Libra is rising, or we listen to a Libra sun sign, either way. The conjunction of Venus and Jupiter is in the 10th house, which is the career place that's about public visibility, reputation, career, notoriety, mastery, anything that also involves you in the world, even after retirement, that keeps you active and engaged in civic, social arenas. So on the psychological level, I would think a lot about ambition and what are your deepest emotional desires and aspirations shaping the direction of your career currently. I would think about the impulse to nurture, heal, connect through emotional ties or substantive emotional connections rooted in care, nurturance, devotion, the kind of maternal Cancerian lunar qualities, maybe the psychological impact of your family, ethnic, racial, historical, religious background and the role that's playing in the workplace somehow right now as a theme of exploration. On a mundane level, I would think about something like a matriarch, like the image of a matriarch is very Venus, Jupiter in the midheaven, a female leader, or a strong, let's call it yin style of leadership, success or promotion in some kind of Venus, Jupiter, and Cancer career. Maybe that's something in, teaching children, or maybe that's in nursing or catering, or, you know what I mean? Like I kind of think of the Venus, Jupiter, and Cancer dynamics and how that could show up. Do you provide some form of social support for families? Whatever the case might be, I could see forms of mundane success in Cancer, like Venus, Jupiter, Cancerian kinds of careers. And then number 3 on the list, people, places, or things. I think about leaders, bosses, CEOs, matriarchs, grandmothers, mother as leader of the house, some kind of business that's being established as maybe a family business, but also kind of a Cancerian enterprise. I think about something like a family crest, the symbol of a family that not as common now, but was long time ago. I also think there's a little storefront area not far from us. It's all these like little boutiques that tend to be run by small businesses, so often family run, things like that come up. Now, to me, the shadow of this 10th house placement is going to be the need to appear to the public like a caring, concerned, maternal. So that could lead to exhaustion because you feel like you have to show up and give and give and give. And maybe there's a public image that you're very aware of needing to fulfill that places a pressure on you to be like the mother to everyone, the provider of every form of resource or support, to feel pressure by that, or to try to conform to an image like that, even though it's not really who you are. I could see those as problematic, or questions about what resources do I really have to give versus what do I need to hold back. That could be a tricky thing to parse out. All right, so let's move on to Scorpio on the ascendant. When we do Scorpio rising, listen to this for your sun or rising sign, then the Venus-Jupiter conjunction is happening in the 9th house. So this is a place of faith, religion, this quest for knowledge and wisdom and understanding, sages, teachers, universities, libraries, pilgrimage, travel abroad, usually with the realization of new experiences that broaden your horizons or make you wiser because of it. So 9th house, even the travel is usually associated with kind of growing in wisdom. Anyhow, so for the 9th house, let's break these things down and let's go psychological first. On a psychological level, Scorpios right now, I think about the power of emotions in conveying truth. If my beliefs aren't rooted in a deep level of caring, concern, commitment emotionally, how good are they? On the other hand, maybe there's a need for greater objectivity and less emotionality in your spiritual, religious, moral commitments, right? Sometimes we need to really care on a heart level, on an emotional level, be invested in the things we believe in or the things we're learning or the teachers we're working with. Sometimes we need a little bit of healthy distance. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but finding the tension between a distance, detached, broader perspective and one that's very emotionally committed. That could be a tense dynamic to hold right now if you're a Scorpio. Number 2, on the mundane level, I just wonder, I could see someone taking a trip to the country that their ancestors came from. If you've never been there before, or I know like some of my Jewish friends where I think you can be sponsored in some Jewish communities to go to the Holy Land or to go to back to your roots. I've had friends that have taken that trip before, and I think of something like that, right? As a kind of metaphorical image, travel in relation to ancestry. The other thing that comes to my mind would be travel to any kind of spiritual retreat place, kind of like the 12th house horoscope, where there's an emphasis on healing, retreat, self-care, a kind of nourishment that's found through traveling someplace or a pilgrimage of some kind. When I think of people, places, and things in the 9th house, I think about professors, monasteries, libraries. I think of rivers, oceans, places near water. And I think about what's happening in those places is learning, teaching, expanding the mind, being enlightened from within, finding spiritual practices and commitments, finding some form of spiritual nourishment or healing for afflictions. And then the shadows that I could see coming up around this 9th house would be, again, the potential for your beliefs to be clouded by emotional attachments or problematic ancestral karmas. Maybe my family has a tendency of being really extreme about something, and I've sort of inherited that, and I have to work through it and become softer and more open or broad-minded. I think the other thing here would be any kind of emotional inflation where we're not just charismatic, but we can become almost fanatical because of the high amount of emotionality surrounding Venus, Jupiter, and Cancer in the 9th. And then if we mistake highs and lows emotionally for spiritual growth with maybe a path of becoming more steady and even keeled, that could be something that we're looking at. It's natural to ride a roller coaster of emotions as we grow. Ideally, we don't have to go through such extreme highs and lows. Maybe we're looking at the balance between how emotional and how even keeled should things be in my life with respect to the path I'm walking. All right, so those are some things for Scorpios. Let's go along and put Sagittarius on the ascendant. So here's Sag on the ascendant, Venus, Jupiter getting together in the 8th house. And this place associated with karmic debts, karmic exchanges, what I owe you, what you owe me, what I give you, what you give me, debts and inheritances, the give and take and exchange karma that takes on so many different roles and shapes in the 8th house. For Sagittarians, this is where the exploration is at right now. So on a psychological level, I would think about the intensity of emotional bonds and what they provide you with or what they take from you. I would think about questions of things that are being given or that you're being blessed with, or things that you feel like you're losing. The potential for Venus, Jupiter to represent, for example, the loss of something very treasured or loved in the 8th house is a real possibility. But so too is the feeling that you're coming into almost like the karmic blessing of Venus, Jupiter, that someone is bringing into your life somehow. Also, I would think about loyalty and what's shared, bonds that feature mutual love, respect, giving, caring, as a real potential, really nice thing that's being heightened or strengthened right now. Anyway, on the mundane level, I could see literal questions about finances, joint finances, partner or spouse's finances, things like wills, trusts, legacies, investments, taxes, that just questions about shared assets and the kinds of exchanges, clearing of debts, things like that. People, places, and things for the 8th house. I think about bankers, investors, financial advisors. I think of wills, trusts. I think of like treasure chests that are found in sorting through a deceased relative's house and finding a treasure or something. I could think about people who work with death somehow intimately. I also think about the beauty and sort of somberness of like a grave site, like visiting someone's grave and feeling connected and feeling loss at the, this kind of bittersweet. And then number 4, the shadows. I could think about the way in which emotional entanglements are making things very complicated right now. Intimacy, bonds, and what they make us feel like we're obligated to do versus what we want to do versus what we have to do, duty, parsing those things out, given the depth of emotional bondedness here, might be complicated and could involve unhealthy forms of bondage or attachment that have to be maybe even let go of. So those are some things that come to my mind there for Sages with the 8th house connection. Let's go on to Capricorn rising. For Capricorn rising, we're looking at the 8th house, Venus, Jupiter conjoined, or 7th house, Venus, Jupiter conjoining in your 7th house of love, relationships. We're going to be doing a webinar on this tomorrow night. Hope you guys will come check it out. It's a place that was associated with karma, desire, happiness, sex, intimacy, love, and connections with others. So for Capricorns in that relationship house, some themes to watch for. Let's start with the psychological. I would think about the emotional dynamics, the give and take on an emotional level. What kind of support do I provide? What do I need? Is it reciprocal? Is it balanced? Is there a healthy give and take, a healthy level of vulnerability that's shared, not just one person being vulnerable, but both people opening and fluidly exchanging emotionally, psychologically, and so forth. So that question of emotional reciprocity in relationships, psychological theme for the 7th. I would think about starting a family with someone, or questions about what kind of emotional bond, what are you trying to create with someone right now? It's a very creative, fertile transit. Is it about marriage? Is it about falling in love, moving in together, moving for a spouse's job? And questions about how much of me should I give versus how much should I try to hold on to, and what should be shared, what kinds of compromises are good ones. Number 2, on the mundane level, I think about maybe partnerships in love and business, or I think about the intersection between family karma and intimate relationships, or even sexuality. If you grew up in a space that was not physically safe, it's hard sometimes to physically open up. And sometimes a transit like this says, hey, it's time to heal, and you're with someone who's going to keep you safe, so you can open up a little bit more. Yeah, the mundane could also have something to do with the cooperative way in which you and a partner are designing a living place together, or decorating it, painting it, whatever, something super simple like that. Number 3 would be people, places, things. I think about marriage rings. I think about signing contracts to purchase a home together. I think about marriage counselors, matchmakers, wedding ceremonies. I think about, like a family legal proceeding or something, which I don't think is super fitting for Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, but yeah, even just like anything involving trying to come to some kind of resolution or agreement around something in the family. This is a transit that can bring agreements or resolution, or kind of like peace. So is there something that's being agreed upon right now where there's been tension around home, family, and marriage? That's a possibility. And then the shadows that come up for me here would be codependency, again, emotional entanglement or enmeshment in relationships, problematic issues between family histories and relational dynamics where there's conflict and it's rooted in different upbringings, avoiding emotional intimacy versus too much emotionality, things like that. All right, now let's move on to Aquarius rising. I'm going to put Aquarius on the ascendant, which brings Venus, Jupiter into the 6th house. An Arta house, which is a series of houses, the 2nd, 6th, and 10th in Indian astrology, all associated with the struggle for material well-being and security, and then enjoyment, acquisition, wealth, any way in which material resources or assets are connected not only to safety and security, but then enjoyment and pleasure. The 6th house was a house that was associated with the struggle, the effort, the work, the sacrifice, the labor that goes into establishing that security and attaining those acquisitions, and therefore is thought of as a rather difficult house. The things in the 6th house that prevent us from that are sometimes like sickness or disease or hard labor that doesn't always feel like it leads to much more than being able to pay the bills paycheck after paycheck. So the 6 can represent the struggle for material security and happiness, the hurdles that we face, the sacrifice, the hard work, the labor that we perform, or even the service that we provide to others, because there are people who are suffering in the world and don't have material resources. So this can be a very kind of charitable workhouse too, or sacrifice and service house. All right, so let's break these down into areas again. The 4 areas here, psychological starting. On a psychological level, I think about devotion, care, mothering. To me, this is like like let's create a sanctuary for refugees. Let's create services of care for families who are on the poverty line, struggling, need help, single moms who need help, women who need help with family planning or care of their bodies, people who are underserved and, you know, down on hard times. Like, and this is just such, to me, there's such a real possibility here for that theme of caring, concern, healing. I think about my little girl who's Aquarius rising, and she's right now as I'm giving this horoscope, right? She's fostering a bunny, like foster care for a bunny. These are like rescue animals, right? So she's learning to care, and the bunny needs a lot of sweet, tender care. They're very sensitive little beings. There's that kind of Cancerian, that Venus, Jupiter, and Cancer kind of care and concern theme that may come up. Also, could be directed toward oneself. Are you caring for yourself? Are you in need of greater self-care or nurturance? What is worth your time and effort emotionally to pour into things with sacrifice, care, work, and labor? What's the emotional connection, and is it rewarding to care for the things that you're caring for, at least psychologically? On a mundane level, I could see there being positive gains or benefits through nurturing, helping, healing professions, nurses, herbalists, cooks, chefs, therapists, childcare workers, maternal, like a daycare provider, whatever the case may be. You could see benefits or blessings coming through things like that are very Venus, Jupiter, and Cancer. The people, places, and things that come to my mind would be a nutritionist, a veterinarian. The 6th house can be connected with animals. And I think about people working on things with a lot of care and devotion that are very Venus, Jupiter, and Cancer. Like, I think of my wife making herbal medicines, or I think of a friend of ours who weaves these beautiful, like scarves and tapestries and all sorts of things. That she's a weaver. A lot of care that goes into weaving something, So, and then finally, on the level of shadows, the potential for martyrdom or overly sacrificial actions, maybe a lack of emotional boundaries where you take home every stray cat, every wounded animal, and then you don't have enough space to care for yourself or to breathe. Emotional servitude as a problem. That's what I would put it as. All right, last but not least, we have Pisces rising. Let's put Pisces on the ascendant. If you're a Pisces rising, this transit of Venus and Jupiter lands in your 5th house, a place associated with creativity and a certain level of creative happiness, creative fulfillment. And that's also in terms of how you express yourself creatively to other people. So let's begin with the psychological qualities of the 5th house placement. I would say that you're pouring your heart and soul into things creatively. This could be a very fertile pregnancy kind of transit for many Pisceans out there. But it could be art projects. It could be your children and your care for them. Anything that you're pouring yourself into emotionally, creatively, with some kind of care, devotion, maternal sensitivities, to me is probably a big theme here. Psychologically, I would wonder about the question of what is both emotionally, creatively bonding me and connecting me to other people in ways that feel really good versus those that maybe drain or enmesh or entangle. On the mundane level, I would think about this as the joy of a new pregnancy, or the joy of parenting, or watching your kids go through significant milestones in their life. Or I would think about a powerful, overwhelming emotional romance. I want to move in with you, Or I would think about sacred feminine forms of art that are caring, flowing, watery. I would also think about artists and lovers and the combination of art, love, maybe some intersection between creativity and family karma. And then the people, places, or things that come to my mind would be, yeah, like I think of my kids have a playroom in the basement that comes to my mind. I think of the handmade crafts that my kids make. A lot of this for me is coming through kids stuff. I apologize. I think about the sweet love letters passed in junior high. And I think about my wife's garden. These are some, and maybe a friend who comes over and makes everyone a meal. The shadow of the fifth house. Actually, I think Emily might have said that in one of her horoscopes. Maybe that was in my mind from someone saying that recently. Fifth house, the shadow would be over romanticization, a kind of idyllic or idealizing romanticism that's not totally grounded, emotional projection onto one's kids, unhealthy or unclear boundaries around things like love, family, marriage, and maybe seeking too much emotional validation in other people versus feeling it from within ourselves. All right. Yeah, those are my lists. I hope that this was kind of a fun, interesting way of breaking down the horoscopes, and kind of breaking them into different areas for me was a really helpful way of organizing my notes and keeping me feeling less insane. Horoscopes are just hard for me. It's not my wheelhouse necessarily. Okay, anyhow, we'll leave it there for today. After I sign off, there's an informational video that's going to tell you all about the retreat that we're taking, this immersive training program in oracular divinatory astrology. We're meeting in Mexico next summer. So stick around to hear more about that. I hope to see some of you on that retreat. And otherwise, we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm really excited to tell you more about the Oracle Within, the retreat that we'll be hosting in Mexico in June of 2026. So this is a little informational video that I've made to answer all the questions that you might have about the retreat. In this video, I'm going to start by telling you more about what you will learn on the retreat, what the focus of our studies will be, and then I'm going to tell you about our daily format and sort of what day-to-day life will look like at this retreat center outside of the actual material we'll be studying. I'm going to then tell you who this retreat is ideal for, what kind of background you may want to have before coming along. And then finally, I'm going to tell you more about how you can register. And of course, I'll take you over to the actual retreat website page so that you know where all of the information is located. There's also a really rich FAQ section that will probably answer any further questions you may have. On that note, let's start with what will I learn? So for a very long time, astrologers have talked about what astrology is. What is this? Is it some kind of karmic science? Is it a science of causal energies and influences? Is this actually scientific? Like, what order of knowing is astrology? If we say we can know something about reality, then how can we actually say that when it comes to astrology? These may seem like really deep, dense philosophical issues, but actually they're at the heart of what it means to really deepen into astrology. To have an understanding of what this actually is so fundamental and so helpful. Throughout all of the programs that I teach at Nightlight, I, of course, talk at length about my belief that astrology is a form of divination, that this is a language of signs and omens, very much like the tarot or the I Ching or many other systems of symbolic divination from all around the planet. We're going to spend a lot of time on this retreat talking about what astrology is. From a historical and philosophical perspective, what is divination? What is divination, not just in this tradition, but all over the planet? What kind of things does a divinatory view of the cosmos assume about the nature of reality, about the nature of the soul, and what we're actually doing as practitioners when we practice astrology or when we study it or when we use it for ourselves? So one of the teachers that I had that made a huge impact on me, and 12 years ago when Jupiter was last in Cancer, I hosted him for a retreat on astrology as a form of divination is Jeffrey Cornelius. He wrote this book called The Moment of Astrology, Origins in Divination, which is, in my opinion, one of the best books on astrology ever written. This will be something like a preparatory textbook that a lot of students on the retreat I'll recommend read before you come to this course. Over the program for the course of a full week, in the mornings, we're going to be talking about the history, the metaphysics, the philosophy, the ancient mystics, and what they said about the nature of astrology itself. So we're going to think really deeply about what is astrology. Then in the afternoons, we're going to talk about how to connect with an oracle. Connecting with an oracle, connecting with astrology as a divinatory system, in other words, is about the marriage of intuition and being able to listen to the oracle speak while also utilizing the logic of craft. How do you marry those two things together? It's not something we take a lot of deliberate time to talk about as astrologers. So in the mornings, we're talking about history, philosophy, theory of astrology. In the afternoons, we're going to be talking about how to actually develop a living, vibrant relationship with an oracle so that it's informing how you approach the craft of a reading or how you approach the craft of astrology itself, if it's something that you maybe just use only for you in your own spiritual path. Either way, practitioners, hobby students are all welcome. So a lot of hands-on immersive work with charts, with live clients, with different systems of divination, and talking a lot about how to connect with an oracle experientially in our afternoons, where our mornings will be devoted to theory. It's about 30 to 40 hours worth of content that we'll be doing over the course of a week together, which means this is effectively like one of my advanced training programs condensed into a week. It's brand new material, brand new curriculum, doesn't appear anywhere else in the Nightlight programs, and yet everything that this program includes is really a condensation of the underlying philosophy of astrology itself that is a part of all of the Nightlight programs and all of my work as a whole. And again, most of that was deeply inspired by the work of Jeffrey Cornelius, who's I consider him something of a mentor in my life. So that's a bit about what you will learn. If you have questions about what you will learn, you can feel free to email me for more details, info@nightlightastrology.com. Now, I want to talk about the format of the retreat. When you're on this retreat, first of all, you're in a beautiful sort of jungle beach location near Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, for a week, which means we every day will not just be about theory and experiential, immersive, oracular work, which I'm very excited about. I have a ton of really good curriculum written for us as a group to go through, but in the mornings, we're going to have the option of starting your morning with breath work, yoga, meditation. In the evenings, we'll probably cap our days off with a little bit of centering as well. So my wife, Ashley, who I ran a yoga studio with for a decade, will be with me leading daily meditation and yoga. She is an incredibly good yoga teacher, very grounded and very, wherever your level is at, there'll be something there for you. And that's optional as well. So every day you have a little meditation and yoga. There's healthy food that serves people if you're vegan, vegetarian, or eat meat or whatever. There's options for food. There's a beach. There's a pool. There's some jungle hikes available. So our days will be broken into periods of free time, periods of rest, and periods of focused learning with things like meditation and yoga as options that are there for everyone. We'll also have some other meaningful group exercises that we'll do that will be, again, about how do you connect with an oracle? How do you make a conversation with the oracle a daily part of your life? So that's something of the format that you can look forward to in this beautiful kind of oceanside retreat setting. More information on the website. I'll show you that in a second. Who is this for? Ideally, you are someone who has a background in traditional Hellenistic astrology already. Wherever that comes from, if it's my courses or not, I want people coming to this retreat to have some pretty good solid background in Hellenistic astrology already. Or if you're from within our programs, then as long as you are enrolled in the year one program, you don't have to have finished it. You just need to be at least enrolled in it. Then you would be more than welcome. Any alumni from any of our programs would be welcome. And again, people who have some serious background in traditional astrology already, just because I don't want people to come along with maybe a modern background, but zero understanding of Hellenistic. So that would be who I would recommend this for. Spaces are limited and we anticipate the retreat will fill up rather quickly. So I really recommend registering as soon as you can. You also have the early bird rates to help you save. Finally, how do I register? I'm going to take you over to the website and you will find that here, the website, you can find it under the events page. Go to Immersive Retreat, or under the courses, it's our new course called The Oracle Within. When you scroll down, you're going to see everything that the program includes, basically everything I've gone over, maybe a little bit more details and depth there. as well as a little personal note for me that I wrote about why this means so much to me. You'll learn more about Mar de Jade, which is the beautiful retreat center. You can check it out. You're going to book through us. So you don't book through the retreat center, you book through us, and then we take care of it. At the bottom, you're going to find registration options that will be available starting on August 11th. That's today. Right now, as I'm looking at this, we don't have the prices listed yet. It's still kind of under construction. But at the bottom, you'll find different available options for registering. The different options will include different room options, and there's different. So if you want a private room versus maybe sharing a room with someone we'll assign you with that's part of the group, or maybe even a small group dorm room where there's like 5 people are sharing a room and you're comfortable being with other students on the trip, stuff like that. So there'll be some options there for everyone. There's an early bird rate that'll be in effect until October, saves you a little bit of money off the cost. And then also all of the different room options that are available at different price tiers depending on, and they go first come, first serve in terms of like, so there's some ocean view rooms. The people who book first will, get the best. We just go best available first and just run it like that. So anyway, again, as you are looking over anything on the page, you have any questions, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. I hope that this has been helpful. I can't wait to have finally an immersive in-person training program in a beautiful location. It's nice to do things online, but I really love having in-person time available. And I know that you're going to also really enjoy working with Ashley during the evenings throughout the week. Ashley will also have some little workshops that she'll be offering as options for people that are part of your retreat package that will be on plant spirit medicine topics and how to use different plant teachers to work with different astrological signatures in the chart. You got a difficult Mars, work with this plant. You got a challenged Venus, try this plant. So there's going to be some really fun little add-ons around plant spirit medicine that Ashley, if you know her on my channel, she talks about plants often, will also lead. So anyway, that's it. That's your informational video. I hope that this was useful. Hope to see some of you on the retreat in Mexico next year. Take it easy, everyone.